on February the 9th, 1964, music changed in the United States forever. The Beatles appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show that Sunday night. John, Paul, George, and Ringo. Not only did the music change that night, the boys' haircuts and clothes changed. Have you ever heard of a Beatle haircut or Beatle boots? Parents didn't like the music or anything else about it, but all the kids loved it. What is this? It was incredible. The British invasion had begun. Garage bands, which were unheard of until then, were popping up everywhere, consisting of 3 guitar players and a drummer. It was a crazy time, but it was a wonderful time to be a teenager, or even a preteen in America. Kids started to learn how to play the guitar, and others were ordering drums for Christmas. Most kids were letting their hair grow out and were proudly sporting their Beatle haircut. Most of the garage bands popping up were having lots of fun, but were not very good. Some were good. A few were really good. The Malibus out of Fort Valley, Georgia, were really good, and they became popular quickly. How good were they? Well, they're all around 75 years old now and can't move as fast, but can still make magic with their music. In 2016 and again in 2020, these old guys did a reunion dance for their contemporaries. 1,000 old people bought tickets and showed up for each of those reunion concerts. The reason the number was 1,000 is because that's the maximum number of people they can allow in the building, from when the first note is played until the last note. 1,000 mostly gray-headed people are up and dancing. Tylenol will be the drug of choice after they get home and the next morning. If you were born during the 11-year period from around 1945 to 1956, their music is the soundtrack of your life. The Malibus have a way of taking you back to the most wonderful times of your life. By the way, these 75-year-old Malibus are planning the last hurrah. The Malibu's 75th birthday party, The Last Dance, will be held on January the 28th, 2023 at the Perry GA Agricenter. Tickets will go on sale in early December. You'll be able to get ticket information at the Malibu's Sixpence Facebook group page. Trust me, there will be only 1,000 tickets sold, and they will go fast. For the next hour, you're going to hear from the Malibus, and you're going to hear their stories. And my goodness, they have stories that will make you smile. And you'll be reminded of a wonderful time in our country's history. This is really good stuff.
Viewing life from a hearse, it could be worse. Laugh, think, and cry with the country undertaker.
This is Bruce Goddard, and you're listening to the View from a Hearse podcast. I have the Malibus with me. And, man, they were a happening scene when I was growing up in around Fort Valley, Georgia. They later became the Sixpence. I've got Wes Wheeler, David Luckey, Dennis Herbert, Eddie Bird, Grady Trussell, and Mike Giacino. You're going to hear from every one of them. This is going to be a lot of fun. Wes, let's talk a little bit about what was going on, this craze that got you all interested in even starting a band. Just talk about how all that came about.
Well, Bruce, I I don't know. I can remember enjoying music when I was in the 6th grade, 7th grade. I remember going to a dance at the country club and remembering Moon River and Hey Hey Paula and all that. And so, but the reality is when the Beatles came along, that changed everything. And I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of bands all over the world were formed after the Beatles. But that's what it was for me and David when we heard the Beatles play on the Ed Sullivan Show and started buying their records. We were standing in the hall one day at Fort Valley High School at one of the breaks, and I said, David, why don't we start a rock and roll band?
Well, back in the 60s, I was a musician starting at an early age, had sort of a stage mom, and so learned to sing in public when I was about probably 4 years old. Later on, picked up the ukulele because I was too embarrassed to ask for a guitar. You didn't see very many guitar players around Fort Valley at that point, and so then I finally got the guts. I wanted a guitar, and I got one. So I learned the guitar, and then I got into folk music and bluegrass, and I was performing by myself or with my cousin in Macon, Joe McDaniel. And then in Fort Valley, in high school, I started performing with Johnny Garwood, who also played guitar. He was a year older. So he and I did a lot of folk music and maybe a touch of bluegrass. And then Wes Wheeler and I were, of course, playing football together. But in the off season, we played in the school concert band. I played trumpet, and then Wes played drums. And of course, we were friends. And then when the Beatles hit, it was like Wes and I, we started talking about this music, and we said, man, what is this? And it just started ringing a bell and banging in your heads. And it's like millions of other people at that time. I thought, okay, I've got to plug something in. I've got to be electric. The Beatles that was it, man. Just Jimmy Buffett said about music, he said, you know, once the bug bites, you have to live with the sting. And I thought, I've been stung since 1963, 64 by the Beatles, and I hadn't gotten over it yet.
But over the next few weeks, we started putting the band together. But it really goes back. The Beatles were kind of the trigger that got it all going.
It was a craze. I mean, I remember seeing the Beatles, and just everybody had the mouth wide open. We'd never seen anything like it.
I always thought I was just one of the few crazy ones about the Beatles. But here I am fixing to be 75 years old in about 2 weeks. I've been to Liverpool, I've been to London, to Abbey Road, and the crazy thing about it, there are crazy people just like me all over the world that still adore the Beatles and love their music.
As a young kid, I was taking piano lessons here locally in Fort Valley, and that was good, but I never really truly liked taking piano lessons. My mama made sure that I did that. But I had a friend that one day I was over at his house, and in his closet, I noticed a guitar, an acoustic guitar, and I went over to it, and it was broken. And started just saying, I'd really love to play guitar. And the next thing I know, he says, I don't want this thing. You can have it. So I carried the thing home, found somebody to fix the little broken part there. And from that point, I went into a music store and found me some little beginner music books. And I started just learning some basic little notes and some basic little chords, and would sing along with it and whatnot. Actually kind of got excited about that. And then listening to, before the Beatles, there was several groups that did guitar instrumentals, kind of like, think of it like the Ventures. They were a big name back then. And after I kind of started trying to mimic some of that as best I could at that point in time, and that way I could do some little chording and stuff.
I grew up in Roberta, first 10 grades, around 11 years old. My mother, they bought me a piano and said, you need to take piano lessons.
Well, you could play it, and I guarantee you that.
And I took them for about 2 years. I said, of course, sports was the big thing too, so I'd rather do sports and play piano at the time. So I dropped piano because I was playing mostly by ear anyhow, because the piano teacher would play the song before I would start playing. And she said, "Now you need to read this music." I never read the music. I just listened to her play, and I played her by ear. I was playing like I was reading the music.
I had always loved music. I beat on pots and pans like a lot of drummers, and learned how to play a four-hole harmonica. And I've learned to play guitar in the 6th grade. Music has always been a part of my life. So there was a band room in high school. I was in a high school band, and I would just go up and get a method book and pull out an instrument, and then learn how to play the chromatic scale. And the ones I stuck with were the alto and the tenor saxophone, and various brass instruments. The baritone I liked quite a bit. I own a flugelhorn, an E-flat horn, an F horn, a trumpet, an alto, and a tenor sax right now, and a trombone. Actually, I own a trombone. I don't play it much, but I went from one band to the other. I was in a band in high school. Then the Malibus came along. I was the last person to join the group, and they already had the group started. It was on the road. I was just an audition. I did change a lot of things, not because of what I said. I could play these instruments.
Well, I can vividly tell you how I got involved in fall of 1963, and I was a junior. All the kids went up to the high school program in Reynolds Auditorium, and my favorite teacher, Mr. Harold Helms, was playing guitar and singing, and just impressed me so much, especially when he did the song Auctioneer.
There was a boy in Arkansas who wouldn't listen to his ma when she told him that he should go to school. He'd sneak away in the afternoon, take a little walk, then pretty soon you'd find him at the local auction barn. He said, "Oh my, it's do or die, I've got to learn that auction cry, gotta make my mark and be an auctioneer. $25 bidder now, $30, 30, will they give me 30, make it 30, bid the mama $30, will they give me 30, who'd bid a $30 bid."
And my grandparents helped me go to Bibb Music Center in Macon and purchased a little old no-name guitar, and I started picking out tunes and chords from records. And then on Sunday night, February the 9th, 1964, the Beatles came on, and they did She Loves You. My junior year, I knew I was in love with being in the band and wanting to entertain and be on stage, and that just sold me 100%.
So, Grady, I think that the younger people probably don't understand this, but it was an amazing time to grow up. This was new music. The Beatles came. We were like, what is that? And all we knew is we all loved it. Eddie.
Of course, growing up, as a group of us guys got together, and we started, this was back in Roberta, called the Imperials.
I remember that group.
That's right. And we started playing, doing we practiced in the garage or wherever we could find, or a big room in a house. And so we put a few songs together, and we started playing music around, Roberta and Reynolds. Played at the Woman's Club. You remember that?
I do. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We'd play over there. Played American Legions and stuff like that. So we just around the area, no big deal. But that's how we got started. My daddy, he was selling cars there in Fort Valley, and he was going back and forth from Roberta. He got appointed general manager there at Warren Green Chevrolet O's in Fort Valley. This was about the end of my 10th grade year in Roberta. So daddy got tired of going back and forth. He was going back to dealership a good bit more, So we moved to Fort Valley. And I said, I had a lot of good friends there that greeted me there in Fort Valley, Duke Lane, David Lucky, and all those guys, and Wes, and it just made me feel like home, At the time, David and Wes, they knew I played with the Imperials there in Roberta. They had a band. They just started the Malibus. And later on, a few months later, I guess it might have been a year later after they was playing, they asked me to join the group. Wes told me to go get a keyboard. So I went and got a keyboard at Bibb Music Company. It was a Parfisa organ. You don't even see it anymore. I wish I still had it. It's worth a lot of money now.
Yep.
I had another friend that was in the same grade with me, and he had started up a little garage band called the Velvetones. This little group only had a guitar player with a singer, and had a bass player and a drummer. That's all they had was three. So he invited me over to his house one day, because he heard I could play guitar, and I strummed him a few chords, and the next thing you know, he says, "You're going to be my rhythm player in my band." And I, wow, let's do that. So I played with them.
At that time, we talked to Dennis and said, Dennis was playing a little bit with Chris Smithson.
My best friend at that point in time was Chris Smithson. Chris liked to fiddle around with a banjo, and we got to me playing guitar a little bit and him playing banjo at his house and my house. And next thing, I showed him a little bit of stuff about guitar, and he kind of got interested in that and started listening to some of the Beatles music that had just come out. And we were kind of getting excited about the possibility of that, even though we were doing songs, the folk songs like Peter, Paul, and Mary had and stuff like that. At the same time, not knowing it, Wes Wheeler and David Lucky were also thinking about getting into music. They knew they could do it. And
Mr. Berry, the band director, let us meet one night, gave us the key to the band room. I mean, this shows you the habits, the times have changed. Right. So we had two students here meeting with two other students in the band room. We unlocked the front door to the school, went into the band room, kind of sat around. I had my acoustic guitar. Dennis had his electric guitar. We banged it around a little bit. We didn't know what we were doing. And the interesting part is we had three guitar players and a drummer. And we thought, okay, with electric stuff, we're going to have a bass player. And so we kind of talked about it for a while. Well, who's going to play bass? In a sense, like the original Beatles, they all played guitars. And then in the end, one of them said, okay, I'll play bass. That was Paul McCartney. And we are no in comparison to the Beatles. But in the end, I said, okay, I'll play bass guitar and y'all play the other, lead and rhythm. Yep. I didn't even own an electric guitar. Besides having a bass, Dennis had a relative that had just an old, almost nameless 6-string electric guitar. Played bass on the bottom strings, turned the tone control all the way to bass. And so that's how we played bass. Eventually borrowed a bass guitar, a nameless bass guitar from Bobby Bell, if you remember him.
Oh, yeah, from Reynolds, yeah.
And really the beginning of the band, and I keep trying to tell people, we were not unlike those millions of people that heard the Beatles and said, okay, let's start a band.
I'll tell you this, when we played our first gig, I don't know exactly when it was, about a week, 2 weeks at the most, I think it was a week before that. Peggy and I, my wife, we've been married 52 years now, and we dated 5.5. We had our very first date.
We were at Fort Valley High School, so we had all four of us were Fort Valley High School students. Ann Pearson had a birthday party. So she was going to have a birthday party at her house, and she said, we'd like for y'all to play. So we played for Ann Pearson at her house and set up by the kitchen. We made $25, so we each made $6.25 apiece. But that was sort of the beginning. If she booked us, then we started thinking, okay, what other options do we have?
Wes, going back to the original group, you had Chris Smithson, who was part of that group that ended up getting killed, right?
That's correct. When we started, remember we asked Johnny Garwood, he couldn't do it. So I said, let me ask my neighbor, Dennis Hurley. He's already in a band and he can play guitar. So when I went to Dennis, he said, look, I'm teaching Chris Smithson how to play the guitar. I'll ask him, would he join us? And he was really just getting started, just learning chords. But he was with us probably for the first year and maybe even the first 18 months. And he was getting ready to graduate and go into I think he went to the Naval Academy or somewhere like that. So he said, I've got to drop out. And that's when we went to Reynolds and invited Grady to join us.
James Hennon was in college, Middle Georgia College, or Brownie Hennon as you and I knew him. He started playing drums, and he and I on Saturday mornings would go up to the old high school auditorium on the stage, and the two of us would pick with either a record player or a radio on. And then we said, let's start a band. So summer of '64, Brownie and I put together the Mustangs. In March of 1966, David Lucky called me and asked me to meet he and all the Malibus and the manager, Phil Clark, at WFPM radio station. And I was really nervous because my band, the Mustangs, was somewhat competition for the Malibus, but I have to admit they were much more talented than we were. That night, David and the group asked me would I be interested in joining the group, the Malibus, and playing rhythm, maybe a little bit of lead, and then within a year, I was a full-time bass player.
We were practicing in my mom and daddy's living room, and we had learned, I don't know how many songs, 15 or 20, and I asked Miss Caroline Lane, who was in charge of the Fort Valley Teen Club, I asked her to come over and do an audition. Our real goal was to go be able to play at the Perry Teen Club, which was the premier teen club at the time, but we knew we weren't good enough for the Perry Teen Club.
There were a couple of ladies, Ms. Lane and Martha Ellen McCord. They were instrumental in the teen club here locally in Fort Valley, and we would get together to practice, the four of us, and we just knew we were ready for the teen club, and we would go over there. Me, Dennis Herbert, Chris Smithson, Wes, and David Lucky. Wes and I, we lived next door to each other. We would either practice at my house or Wes's house, but we would invite these two ladies over. We were ready to play the teen club. They'd come and listen to us a little bit, and then they would come back and say, no, y'all aren't quite ready yet. Learn some more songs. And so we'd, another few weeks later, we'd call them up. They'd come over for a little while and kind of give us some encouragement. And then they'd say, no, you're not ready yet. Looking back on it, we were kind of getting aggravated at the two ladies in our own little way, but they really did us a favor, folks. So they put us off long enough that we knew enough songs to pull off a little teen club when we finally got to do it.
Slowly started up. We started playing more dances, playing a little bit further away from Fort Valley, getting a little bit more money each time we played, building a little bit of a popularity base, and it just kept going from there. Stars as big as we would like to think we were. We were a little bit full of ourselves at that window of time. You'd like to think that all the girls are going crazy, and but in reality, we were just enjoying life, having fun, making music. Yes, it was fun having girls standing in front of you dancing, but most of them would always have their boyfriend with them also. But it was a special time. We didn't realize it at the time, Bruce. At least I didn't. We played those years in high school and in college. It was kind of two motivations. It was fun playing. We loved the music, but we were making good money.
Yeah.
But we hired two girls to be go-go dancers.
Did you?
And but anyway, now they were really good-looking girls, and we'd set up. We'd get tables wherever we were. We'd have tables on each side. They have boots on and everything. The mini skirts and all that, and they'd get up there and dance, do the pony and all that stuff. And we try to set it like a TV production.
That's amazing.
We were playing, and we'd had an Atlanta manager by then. We're playing the different things that the Atlanta manager sent us to. We went to the fraternities and all these other bigger events. And I don't even remember how exactly they first came up, but all of a sudden, before a gig, we got go-go girls showing up. We got these I can't remember the first time it was one or two. We get these go-go girls, and they're going to perform with us. So anyway, there's some little tables that were set up on its side, and so they danced all night in their little skirts and stuff on a table. We go play somewhere else over in there, and another month or something like that. Guess what? Go-go girls show up. And so we did go-go girl. And then lo and behold, I know at least another time or two, and all of a sudden they show up, and this time they've got cages. They're dancing inside the cages like you would see on TV.
You got better and better, obviously. I mean, you guys were, when I was growing up, there was a lot of, Eddie talked about the Imperials, and Grady talked about the Mustangs, and everybody had their little bands. But what the Malibus was doing was different. I mean, it was definitely, it was above what everybody else that I knew. I mean, you were Bushman, the Malibus, all of you guys were the top tier.
It's funny how it works. I've said this many times over the years. There was something about the chemistry of those five guys when we started. We had some A players, we had some B players, and we had some C players. And I was one of the C players. But I wasn't the only C player. But somehow or another, the chemistry of it worked.
As you guys hooked up with some big-time stars, I've heard you talk about, Grady, some of the stories you've had, the stories that came from people that you backed up or played with or you met along the way in this whole music journey. So just talk a little bit about those great memories.
I guess the first thing that comes to my mind is first time we backed up Billy Joe Royal, who had Down in the Boondocks and several other hits, and we were getting a sound check. And in walks Billy Joe Royal and a lead guitar player to assist us in the band, Freddie Weller. And Billy Joe walked right up to me and said, "Hi, I'm Billy Joe Royal. What's your name?" And I can remember having to think what my name was. And to add to that, Freddie Weller wound up interviewing with Paul Revere and the Raiders, and he got the job in California and was with Paul Revere and the Raiders for years before he left and went into country in Nashville and had his own hits. B.J. Thomas, first time playing with him was in Waycross Auditorium. And when he came up on stage, the first thing he said to myself and Dennis Herbert, or Rock Herbert as we call him, he held up his left side of his shirt and he said, "You want to see where I got stabbed leaving a club in Mississippi the other night?" Of course, he's passed away this year or last year. I don't know how many people knew he had a scar on his left side, but we certainly did. We were the first band to play Hooked on a Feeling with him, and it was unbelievable.
First thing you know, he's got Billy Joe Royal coming to Fort Valley to play at the Rocket Room, and we're going to play the whole dance, but Billy Joe Royal's going to do about a 30 or 45-minute set. And that was when Down in the Boondocks was huge. I mean, that was huge. It has a really weird drums thing that was hard for me to pull off, to be honest with you. And I was nervous about it, and I kept practicing it, and David was trying to reassure me that I was okay on it, but I really didn't feel comfortable at all. There's some, you may get a story in the band that I didn't play the drums on that. I think I did. I wouldn't put my hand on the Bible and swear I did. But I remember.
That's a long time ago,
I
right?
remember being nervous about it. But we played with him. We played with B.J. Thomas.
How did that happen? How did that come about that you got hooked up with Billy Joe Royal and B.J. Thomas?
The manager that we had, National Artists and Attractions, he had the Bushmen and us and the Strange Bedfellows, but he had connections also with Billy Joe Royal, B.J. Thomas, and many other big names at the time. And as they would tour through states, rather than carrying a band with them, like Gary Puckett carried an entire band with him, about 20 people. But most of the entertainers back then found it easier to go and bring either a bodyguard or bring a guitarist that could help explain everything to us and the score sheets. So we would get hired to back up people like JoJo Benson, Peggy Scott, in Cobb County Fairground, and so many others. It was unbelievable.
Next thing you know, we're asked to be opening one of the bigger acts that had come across Macon in quite a while, and that started the whole new era.
Yeah, that was the big thing at the Macon City Auditorium. You had all kind of groups there, right? I mean,
yeah, they did.
Groups. Yeah.
The groups that had like number one hits. They had Freddie and the Dreamers. They were the top act. They were from England. The Beau Brummels. That was, if I remember right, they had a hit, a Laugh. Then there was the McCoys, who had Hang On Sloopy.
Yep.
And stuff. Matter of fact, there's still a guitar player that was their lead player that is still playing today, and he's really, really good.
Yeah, I remember that song. I can tell you that. Hang On Sloopy.
Yeah. Yep, matter of fact, it was a number one hit, just like Freddie and the Dreamers.
Right.
And then locally, that was it. And then locally, you had Buddies, which was a Macon group, and you had us, the Malibus. And we actually opened that show, which I tell you about the opening producer. I don't know who he was, but there was a producer for the show that went with these groups all around the country as they did their shows. He was in charge of how it all ran. But here we are, a little barely college and rest of them high school kids, and we're opening this act in the Macon City Auditorium. And he comes in and he says, "Boys, let me tell you, y'all are the first act. I'm going to count to 4. I want you to hit the bass drum, and then I want you to start, and we're going to open this curtain, and don't be scared or don't be intimidated," something to that effect. And I can still remember that so well because, here we are, little 17-year-olds up there, and I can still see it today as almost as well as I could then. But all of a sudden, curtain opens, and we start playing our first song, and you look out, the crowd's looking at us, but of course we're looking at the crowd, and we're looking at that, and the whole place is slammed full. It's standing room only. People are screaming. It's mainly girls, and you're up there on the stage, and you're a little 17-year-old, and it's just kind of like it got you. I mean, it just kind of like it grabbed you around the neck.
You were bit. You were bit.
Say, "I like this."
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You mentioned Johnny B. So how did that come about? When I guess you guys were in college, because I think Phil Clark was manager at first, right?
Well, some of that came about as we kind of became popular in the local teen clubs around Middle Georgia. There was a disc jockey here locally. Phil Clark was the name he went by.
Yep, I knew Phil.
He decided that he could book us a little bit, and he booked us a couple other little teen clubs. Next thing we know, he's booking us, in Roswell, or he's booking us in Tifton, and we would go to these different towns in Middle Georgia, or even South or North Georgia. He had a way of contacting the radio stations, say it was Manchester, and he would talk them into doing advertisements about this group coming. And so, lo and behold, we would drive over to, once again, say to Manchester, because while we were driving, we would be listening, and every now and then hear an ad that the Malibus are playing at the teen club. That was a big thing that helped boost crowds. And as you boost crowds and you play and you get better and you get more excited about it, and the next thing you know, it grows, and then the next person tells it about it at Lake Spivey, close to Atlanta, and next thing you know, it's sold out, and go to Tifton and Waycross, and it just kind of started growing.
I don't remember exactly, but somehow or another, we had heard the Bushmen. We were very impressed with the Bushmen, and we knew Johnny B was the Bushman's manager. So we thought Johnny B would take us to the next level and book us at better venues, probably with more pay and further away from Fort Valley. And ultimately, any garage band, Bruce, is always looking for what? Maybe we can make a hit record. That's in the back of your mind, and it was in our mind. We just thought we got to get the right situation, and we're going to get a hit record. So anyway, how we met Johnny B, we knew who he was, and one day I just picked up the phone and called him and introduced myself and told him who we were. I don't know if he really knew us or not, but I said, we're playing at the so-and-so fraternity house in Athens Friday night, and we would like to invite you to come over and hear us and consider being our manager going forward. I mean, just kind of bold enough to call him and see if he was interested. And luckily for us, he said, I'm available and I'll be there. There's still some debate whether he had a girlfriend with him that night or his wife. I'm not sure. But our memories, sometimes I find the band memories are different. We got 6 different memories going on something that happened 50 years ago. But anyway, he did show up and came with some girl, and he listened to us for one set, and he said, I'm impressed. I like it. I want to book y'all, but I want you to change the name to the Sixpence. And we did.
Then later you brought in Mike. So to talk about that, how did you hook up with Mike Justino?
All right, by now we're with Johnny B, And Johnny B calls me and says, Wes, I got a great job for y'all in Atlanta Thanksgiving week, and it's going to be at the Comic Book Club, which was a hot teenage nightclub. No alcohol. It was just a rocking, fun place to go where all the girls and guys went to have fun. We had heard about it. We had never played there, so we were excited beyond words. And so about Monday or Tuesday of that week, Dennis called me and said, look, I'm not going to be able to play. I broke my arm in my wrestling class at Auburn. He was taking a PE wrestling class, which is kind of a joke in itself if you think about Dennis being in a wrestling class.
I was off at Auburn. I was one grade ahead of these guys, but I was at Auburn. Believe it or not, this skinny little Dennis Herbert, I'm taking wrestling as a PE. And it actually gets to final exam time. We're doing our wrestling match stuff, and I fall backwards and end up dislocating my elbow because that puts me in a sling. Well, guess what? Later that weekend, we've got a gig. And so all of a sudden, we don't, I can't play the gig. It's my right arm. And so some of the guys that were down at Southwestern, they knew of Mike, having played in the band, and knew he could play guitar and stuff. So they go and ask Mike, and sure enough, he's able to fill in for me. And I actually went and saw him that night and watched him play, but I couldn't play. But lo and behold, they found out that they liked Mike, and I didn't lose my spot. I still a lead guitar player. But anyway, Mike, all of a sudden, Mike could play saxophone. Mike could play trumpet. Mike could sing lead stuff, and he could play guitar. So the next thing you know, we've got another versatile player in there. So I guess it's a good thing I broke my elbow.
So he was living in Warner Robins at the time. I went over and picked him up, and we drove to Atlanta and started playing some of the songs, practicing. He was just a natural. I mean, he could play any instrument on the stage, literally, and he could sing. In my mind, he's got a different voice than Eddie and a different voice than David, but together the three of them could sing an unbelievable three-part harmony. And here was the cool thing, Bruce. The Hollies were real hot at that time. Look through any window, bus stop, 2 or 3 Holly songs. And so in the day, we would practice at that comic book club, those three-part harmonies. And by the time we were ready to go, we had them down, pat. And so we started playing those 2 or 3 Holly songs with Mike singing harmony with David and Eddie, and it just went over great. And then Mike maybe sang lead on 1 or 2 songs. He was playing guitar primarily, but he could play trumpet. On Saturday night, Bruce, we were packing up the van. We were physically exhausted, and we were packing up the van, and we started whispering to each other, what do y'all think of the idea of inviting Mike to join the band? And everybody was saying, great idea, great idea, great idea. So that night in Atlanta, Georgia, standing right there in front of the comic book club, we invited Mike to join the band, and he said, I'm in, I'll do it.
I was playing in a country band, not doing very well, not liking it very much, and Dennis Herbert broke his arm. He was the guitar player, and so they needed somebody to fill in for a week in Atlanta. So they asked me if I would play, and of course I said yes. It sounded like a good thing, and we got up here and we just hit it off. We just hit it off, and it went very well. We worked up some songs. I could sing. Now we had 3-part harmony. Dennis, Lucky played trumpet. I played trumpet. I played tenor sax. So now we had a 6-piece group with 3 vocalists that had a horn section. So we could play just about anything we wanted to. And so when Dennis came back, he took over the guitar roles again. And I stepped away from the guitar and started playing the horn and singing with a few guitar tunes thrown in here and there. And we were a very versatile group. There were a bunch of multi-instrumentalists in the band, and it was a success.
Yeah.
We had a lot of fun.
Motown was big, starting to be big then and everything. Of course, a lot of horns and stuff, and Mike played good horn, and of course, David plays trumpet too. He switches off on guitar and trumpet. So we started playing a lot of Motown songs, a lot of brass type songs like kind of a drag by the Buckinghams and all that stuff. But Motown was really big too. You know, we started playing a lot of the top songs. You know, it's just the hits that were going on at the time.
Be foolish, but be happy.
We were kind of getting where we thought we were pretty good, but we got a phone call from Cindy, and she said, Wes, I've got a great job for y'all in Atlanta at the Westminster Junior Senior on so-and-so date, but there's one catch. It requires y'all to be able to play My Girl. My Girl had just been out about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. We hadn't even begun to think about playing it. And I said, Cindy, you got a deal. We will learn it. We'll play it. She said, we're going to pay y'all X number of dollars. You're going to play from so-and-so time to so-and-so time. And everything was great. I mean, the band was fired up. We were, going to Westminster. That was at that moment in time, that was one of the biggest things we had done and really was great for your reputation. The band went and spent money and bought some new pants, mattress plaid pants. You remember those, patchwork?
Oh, yeah.
And a blue work shirt, we called it. And so that was going to be our rollout uniform for Westminster. So we get to Westminster and start setting up the equipment that afternoon. And I hadn't said any of this to Cindy. I mean, I was communicating with her. I knew she'd be excited about it. So we set up all the equipment, and we went back in the back and put on our uniforms, and all walked out about 4:30 or 5. We were going to go get a hamburger somewhere and then come back and be ready to play. And this lady said to us, gentlemen, when are y'all going to put on your tuxedos? And we started looking at each other kind of funny, like, ma'am, we don't have a tuxedo. We don't wear tuxedo. She said, well, you will not be playing the Westminster Junior Senior tonight. Well, in David's book, he says we were kind of ballish back then. I use the word bold. We were pretty bold. And so we just basically said, that's fine. That's fine. We don't have a tuxedo. We're not going to wear a tuxedo. If you want us to play, we'll play. If you don't, we headed back to Fort Valley. And so in my mind, there was about a 30-minute to a 45-minute standoff between the band and this mother who must have been in charge of the band and her daughter and maybe Cindy Davis, I'm not sure. But finally, they settled it and said, okay, we're going to let y'all play just like you are. That's fine. And so we did. And it was a great dance. I've got a picture, Bruce. It's so cool. It's us on the stage. Chris Misson's with us with those outfits I described to you. Dennis and Chris have their guitars straight up in the air, going 12 o'clock, straight up in the air on some song. And behind the drum set is a big Confederate flag. It's a great picture. I mean, it's a priceless picture.
Wes was the money man. He was a Wes Wheeler dealer. Wes Wheeler, the Wheeler dealer. He was the guy. Here's another little funny story. Okay, we were in Waycross backing up B.J. Thomas. The guy who booked us in Waycross was going to shortchange us. For some reason, we were not going to get the full amount that we were promised. And Wes did not give up on the band. He went in there and negotiated, talked with this guy. And he finally gave us all the money that we had contracted for. And we never would have got that money if Wes had not been the person that he was to get that money out of him. Don't get on the wrong side of the table with Wes, because he's going to win. He will definitely, if he doesn't outmaneuver you, he will outlast you.
We played for a junior senior. Oh man, I'm trying to think of the name of the community. It's where there's a prison.
Reedsville,
that's it.
Yeah, okay.
So we're playing for the junior senior for Reedsville. So, we set up and we started played the first set. Teacher, and I can't remember now, he could have been like a vice principal or something, but he was the self-proclaimed leader of the junior senior. You do it my way or you don't do it. So he came up and said, you boys need to turn down. It's too loud. And I will say this. That was about the time where our popularity was sort of getting around a little bit, and every band known to mankind, you just don't walk up to a band and say, turn down.
Right.
You do what Leonard Skinner said, turn it up.
Right.
So we sort of hit the volume maybe a quarter of a notch. The old trick we used to do was say, hold on, and we'd walk back to our PE board and fake a turn down.
Right.
And so we said, we got it. So we kept playing. The guy came up there and said, I thought I told y'all to turn down. We did, sir. And I mean, turn down. So at that point, we turned down a little bit. So he came back up there again. We're not even through the first set. And so the guy just kept, I'm telling you boys, turn down and do it now. So what we decided, we said, let's turn it off. So we turned it off, except for Wes, of course. He was acoustic. So we turned everything electronic off and started playing a song like we were on. It got really weird.
That was smart.
Everybody stopped dancing, looking at us like, what's going on? What's going on? Wait, what are you people doing? And bam. So we turned the mic on and said, well, we're complying with your principal's request. He kept telling us to turn it down and turn it down and turn it down. So there was nowhere to go but turn it off. And I mean to tell you, at that point, it was almost like a riot in the school.
I bet.
And they chased his self right out of the dance, and some other teachers told him, you might want to go ahead and leave. We were a little cocky at that point.
Make me want to shout, kick my heels up and throw my head back and throw my arms up and come on now. Shout what you say you will. Shout what you say, yeah, 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 yeah. Say you will, say it right now, baby. Say you will.
Our manager booked us at a black nightclub way out in the country, way out in, it was outside of Athens someplace. And so we were going to back up this guy named T. Fletcher. And I didn't know him at all. But we pulled into this place, and way back when in the country, you swept the yard, you didn't cut the grass. Well, with this one, you swept the yard because it was so sandy and dirty. And there was this old abandoned shack of a place that we had to play in. And it turned out to be a black nightclub. And so we set up inside. We were real sort of apprehensive about the place, but the evening wore on, and these 3 or 4 huge guys stood right in front of the bandstand, did not smile, did not blink hardly, but looked at us with these mean expressions. And I was sure my life was going to end right after but nothing ever happened. So they liked the music, but they didn't like us in their place, in their, so they didn't smile or anything. They just stood there all night long.
We went over to Auburn University to play for a fraternity, and it was the agriculture fraternity at Auburn. And so we ended up going out into the country where they were going to have their party, a regular old fraternity party. So we get out there with our equipment and stuff, and we've got a road manager by then, by the way, that's setting up and driving for us and all that. We get out there, and it's a chicken coop. It is a real, true-to-life chicken coop. Now, bear in mind, it's had the chickens, but for this, they've gone and taken the chickens out and putting them somewhere. After the gig, they put the chickens back in there, but it was somebody's real true-to-life chicken coop. So we had played a chicken coop, and actually we kind of laughed at that all night. And of course, we made all sorts of little jokes about it and all this sort of stuff and whatnot.
Hey, Bruce, we'd be going to a job. We'd play a job. We get through with it like we were in Alabama somewhere. Anyway, we'd always drive, and we were so lucky not to have a wreck or anything.
Yeah,
or whatever. Wow. I mean, as much traveling as we did, especially at night, because we'd be in Alabama one night, we'd have to be in Florida the next night sometimes. Always after the job, who wants to take the wheel first? So, somebody jump on. About halfway down the trip, he'd start getting sleepy. He'd cross out of the road, whoever was driving. All right, Who's going to drive? Everybody was asleep. We just sit there on the side of the road. We'd sit there 30 minutes before somebody finally gets up there behind the steering wheel. That was always.
God, yeah.
That was always funny.
Oh my! It's a wonder you got out of all that alive, right?
I'm serious.
Grady owned a true hippie van, Volkswagen van.
Right.
And so we played Americas. And Dennis and I were going to ride back with Grady in the van. And so we got just a little bit out of Americas, headed back. And it was, typical time for teenagers, 2 o'clock in the morning, maybe 1 o'clock, but certainly, not normal hours for a teenager back then. Right. So Grady said, I don't have much gas in here. We said, well, let's stop and get some. We don't want to run out of gas. He said, don't worry about it. This one has a reserve tank. Oh, okay. So we get out, and we were just beyond the airport in Americas. And Grady said, okay, I'm out of gas. I'm going to shift it over. He said, oh, I forgot. I never filled up the reserve tank. And so we ran out of gas. Pulled over to the side of the road.
It's not like you had cell phones to call mama either, right?
Yeah, no cell phones. And in the lighting, let's just say, along the highway from Americas to Oglethorpe was not like it should be, maybe. And so we get out, and we have Beatle boots on. We said, we're going to have to walk back to Americas. And so it's, pitch black. And we locked the van, and Dennis and Grady and I started walking with Beatle boots all the way back. And we walked probably several miles until, I don't know if someone reported us or whatever, but the police came and stopped, had the blue lights on, pulled over. What are you boys doing? And we said, well, we're in a band. That's almost an invitation to take you to jail,
right,
back then.
Right.
And so anyway, but thanks to that guy, we explained to him what was going on. He actually drove us back to Americas and let us buy a thing of gas to bring us back.
We're going to go to Atlanta to play in the WQXI Battle of the Bands. Battle of the Bands were big back in those days. And if you were lucky enough to win one or get in the top 3, it would really step up your popularity and what you could ask for payment, for your jobs. So we go up there to Atlanta like 2 weekends in a row on Sunday afternoon and perform in this Battle of the Bands, and we made the Final 4. So the Sunday we were going to play for the Final 4, Paul Revere and the Raiders with a spotlight band after the Battle of the Band was over. They were going to play about a 30 or 45-minute set, and so that attracted a big crowd, right? So one of the requirements, you had to play 4 songs, if I remember right. One of the requirements, you had to play original songs, so we played one of David's songs. Then we played 2 other songs that I can't remember what they were. But the thing that was so cool, we decided to play one of Paul Revere and the Raiders songs. And I was trying to think this morning, it was either Kicks or Just Like Me. I can't remember which one. But we nailed it.
And they were there. They were going to hear you, right?
The whole crowd was going to hear us. And Paul Revere and the Raider, we assumed were in the back room getting ready. And they would hear it. And,
that's what I'm saying.
So we came out and nailed that song. I think like, da, 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 da,
It's just like me, say to you.
And we played that thing, and I swear if you'd have blindfolded yourself, you would have thought Paul Revere and the Raiders on the stage. We were real proud of ourselves for that, being strong enough and confident enough to pull that off.
We played Montgomery, junior, senior in Alabama. And so we had just bought a trailer that was made for us in Oglethorpe. So we picked up our trailer. We took it to Montgomery. And so we played the junior, senior. And, of course, it was all in the parking lot. We had our equipment with us, played the junior, senior. And when we left the junior, senior to go pack up our stuff, the trailer was on axles, no wheels. Somebody had stolen the wheels right there in the parking lot. And actually, that was on a Saturday. So we made it back because we had a car, pulled the trailer. So we all just shoved in there. And locked the equipment and just hoped it would be there. But on Monday, Wes, along with David Lane, they had to ask the school if they could get out to drive to Montgomery to pick up our band trailer.
We had so much fun and so much humor involved in almost everything we did over those years. There was a time when we were on the road and everything, you couldn't go to sleep for your ears ringing or either dreaming about the chords of a song.
Johnny B. Talents, he's kind of really put us on the map. I mean, he had a good agency. He had the Bushmen at the time, too.
Right.
Had the Mouse Boys and Brass, which was a group out of Jacksonville. But we all ran the same circuit all through Georgia and Florida mostly, and we did some stuff in Alabama. Yeah, just kind of like over the Southeast a little bit.
Right. Well, you were busy too, right? I mean, you guys were playing a lot, right?
Oh, we was playing a lot. We was playing about every weekend during college. We'd all meet in Fort Valley or wherever, and we had a trailer there, and we'd haul tail.
I love you so. Baby, please don't go. Baby, please don't go. Oh, baby, please.
Of course, when we first started, we hired Dwight, my brother, Jimmy Jones to be our roadies. And they helped us as long as they could. I think Dwight got a little tired of it later on. But Jimmy he hung in there with us a long time. He'd get some help sometime, but we had roadies where we wouldn't have to do all the. That's the worst thing of it, is setting up and tearing down.
When you look back at this, what do you remember as being the greatest memories you had of the Malibu Sixpence?
To me, honest to God, other than family, it was the most important thing in my life. If I could get on a bus or a truck with the guys again this coming Monday and hit the road on tour again, I would be the first one on the bus.
That's unbelievable.
We'd go to Daytona and play music. I'll never forget out at Holiday Shores Hotel. We'd go in there and play in the afternoons, and people come from the beach, and then we'd go to the Martinique Club at night and play till 2 a.m. We never got tired because we were young.
Right.
Kind of part of my identity. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know exactly the answer to that. We were just teenagers. We're having a good time and making some money. And I really think it became even more important to me once we started these last three, the two in Perry and the one at Camp John Hope. I think it really took on kind of a significance and became even more important because that's when you really started to realize this is pretty special. I mean, to think we're 75 years old, can still play the same songs we played back in 64, 65 through 68, almost at the same level of quality that we played them back then, and do it in such a way that excites a lot of people and that enjoy coming to do it and dance to it, sing along with the songs. That's pretty special.
Can't imagine, and I agree. I mean, you guys, you playing band when you were young, you go your separate ways. When you see each other, you pick right back up, and you've got this bond because you had that experience together that will last the rest of your life.
That's a good way to put it. It's a bond that you can't break, and it's not like we've been friends every day talking to each other every day. But when we get together or when we do talk, we've got that one common ground of all those years together and all the experiences together, and that makes it very, very special.
Yeah.
Explaining to someone one time, they said, "Well, how long have you been in this band?" And I said, "Well, this band was formed, about 1964." And I said, and the amazing part of this is we're still friends. I said, bands that formed back then, they all had fights and arguments, and we broke up and formed other bands. And I said, but it's been incredible. I said, we're still friends. Musicians don't do that.
Right.
But we've somehow been able to mix the friendship with being a musician with each other. So
that's amazing.
I'm thankful for that as well.
Having these reunions is actually it's really a blast, and doing it. And of course we have to get together and practice some, but by and large we play the songs that we played and had played 1,000 times, from the 1960s. And so we could almost get together today and play it if we wanted to. But it means a lot, and especially to have all the people that come and make an effort to come out to it. And it's just a big thrill for us. We have every bit as much fun, if not more, than than the people that are there.
Just fun to see everybody, and everybody gets together. They hadn't seen each other in so long, and of course it's good. The music's good for the souls, no doubt about it. It makes you feel better. It makes you feel younger, and I think it's just overall, I think it's just a wonderful thing.
I've got a photo on my phone with my daughter in one of the concerts. Came up behind me and put her arm around me, and that's got her left fist in the air. And Jana Herbert is doing the same thing to rock at the same time. And to me, that is the favorite photo of my life.
We can come together in a few years and play one gig, and have these multitude of people show up. It is just unbelievable when I look at the videos of us playing on stage, and the people in the audience. They're just so many of them are up and dancing and really enjoy the music. I didn't really understand it at the time. I just sort of went along with it, but I just, in retrospect, seeing current bands and the amount of people that show up, and then seeing us and the amount of people that show up is just incredible. Dennis has cancer. I had triple heart surgery and 3 more stents put in this summer. David has rotator cuff problems, and I don't know. Oh, Eddie has macular degeneration, so, and we're all suffering from certain things. So this is going to end. This is going to be the last one.
We're about at our max of how we physically can do it.
There's some health issues going on in different band members, including me, and it's just the time to do it one more time and then put it to bed.
And I've read some postings of some people after we play. If you want to call them fans, this might sum our fans up. They said, this band, the band of our lives. And I thought, what they don't get is they were the youth of our band.
I believe that people are going to be listening to this after we're dead and gone. Once I put this out there, it's preserved forever. What is your message to them right now? You're about to be 75 years old. You've had a heck of a run. You've had a great life.
Making music with the Malibus was a great experience. It was a lot of fun. Life is short. Do the things that you want to do now, because you never know when your time's coming. If you got things you want to do, go ahead and do it. Be a friend to a few people. I read one time, if you got 5 true friends, you're truly blessed. And there's some truth to that. A big message I would give them is be a blessing to other people. We've been blessed, so look for a way that you can be a blessing to other people. And in the end, Bruce, you know this, I know this, I want to say it for my children and grandchildren. They know how I feel about this. Your salvation is the only thing that's really, really important. And I would say thanks be to God for that.
One thing I would disagree with you about the friends. You need at least 6 when you're Undertaker. You need 6 friends. Don't stop at 5.
Viewing life from a hearse, it could be worse. Laugh, think, and cry with the country Undertaker.